Welcome to America's News Headquarters. I'm Arthel Neville.
Hey, nice to see you. Hello,
nice to
good
see
morning,
you, Eric.
Arthel. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn. President Trump, as you know, has threatened to shut down the government if the lawmakers do not allocate $5 billion for his wall. Well, Democratic leaders Nancy Pelosi and Senator Chuck Schumer say, well, that's not happening. Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan, who's a member of the House Appropriations Committee, weighed in just moments ago in an exclusive interview on Sunday Morning Futures.
It's a sign of the dysfunction in Washington. We've got to figure out how to come together here around some basic budgets. I mean, we believe in border security. I believe in border security. We have technologies today that are far surpass a wall. I mean, this is not the 15th century.
Molly Hannenberg has the very latest from a Washington newsroom on all this. So, Molly, it sounds like the Democrats are really digging in and saying that they will not allocate $5 billion for the wall, though they have proposed $1.3 billion for border security.
Hi, Eric. Certainly the position of the top Democrat in the Senate, New York Senator Chuck Schumer, who said this morning that President Trump doesn't have the votes in Congress to get more money, and that the president and Republicans should get on board with two other options proposed by Democrats, such as a continuing resolution, or CR, to fund the government for now and maybe take up the wall again in 2019.
Those two options are the kinds of things that Republicans have supported in the past. And when you talk to them privately, even publicly, a lot of them have said a CR is much preferable to a shutdown. They just have to have the guts to tell President Trump he's off on the deep end here, and all he's going to get with his temper tantrum is a shutdown. He will not get a wall.
President Trump told Senator Schumer and Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi that he wants about $4 billion more than they want to provide for the border wall and border enhancements. The president says he would be, quote, proud to shut down the government for border security. Eric?
And Molly, what are Republicans saying about the president's threat?
Well, the wall is something the president campaigned on, and he wants that wall. Some of his GOP colleagues in Congress are hoping for more of a compromise.
There's absolutely no excuse to shut down government on this issue or any other issue. I have suggested that we revisit a compromise proposal that we brought forth earlier this year. I helped craft it. It was offered by Senators King and Rounds, and it provided $2.5 billion this year and over the next 10 years to fully fund the Border Security Initiative.
One of the president's top advisors says this goes beyond a wall, that it's a matter of national security.
This is a president who knows that we as a nation have been spending billions of dollars over decades helping other nations protect their own sovereign borders. It's high time we do it here.
The top Senate Republican, Mitch McConnell, says, quote, magic things happen at Christmas, and he says he'd like to see a smooth ending to this budget battle. Eric?
All right, let's see if Santa has a big bag with $5 billion in it coming down the chimney. We'll see. All right, thanks, Molly. Arthel?
All right, Eric, for more on this, let's bring in Francesca Chambers. She's the White House correspondent for the Daily Mail. Always nice to see you, Francesca.
Nice to see you. And Arthel, I have to tell you right away, I don't think that the president's getting a big bag of $5 billion from Congress for this border wall this Christmas.
Okay, having said that, then, is the partial shutdown imminent? Or if it's not, Francesca, what will ward it off?
Well, the White House is now shopping a potential short-term continuing resolution, which would push off this debate until early next year. The only problem with that is the president, he currently has leverage because Republicans control the House of Representatives. In early next year, Democrats will take control of the House of Representatives. And that is why some conservatives in Congress, including the House Freedom Caucus, have said now is the time. If the president is going to force the issue through a shutdown, he'd have to do it by this Friday, December 21st.
And meanwhile, you've got the budget director, who is now the White House chief of staff, supposedly acting, but probably will be. Will the Mick Mulvaney promotion make a difference?
He is currently acting, and he still remains the head of the budget office, but his deputy will be doing the day-to-day activities the White House has said. But that being said, if there was a shutdown, he would be the one who would technically have to oversee that. So this complicates the matter because he's just now learning the responsibilities of being chief of staff. John Kelly is still there, but he's leaving at the end of this year. So to put Mick Mulvaney in a position where he'd have to oversee a shutdown either at the end of this year or at the beginning of next year while he's learning the ropes of being White House chief of staff, again, really complicates the issue and might also suggest that the White House and President Trump are now really rethinking the idea of a government shutdown.
Interesting. I mean, look, of course, first and foremost, the concern should be for the people, Americans. That said, talk to me again about which party stands to get stung by a partial government shutdown. Which party?
Well, the president previously said that he thinks it would be a political winner for Republicans, but that was before we were talking about having a shutdown that would come just a few days before Christmas time. And a shutdown would only affect 25% of the government, roughly, in this case. It's not the same as in the past. This is a sliver of the government. Defense Department has already been funded. There are other places like DHS that have not been funded yet that it would affect. And among that, there are federal workers who would be furloughed without any pay. Now, Congress often comes back and gives them that pay. However, at the time, it would essentially be an unpaid leave of absence. Then there are also federal workers who would be required to work without pay, and they would definitely be paid back after the fact. So it would put a lot of families in limbo over the holidays.
Absolutely. Let's play some sound, more sound from Senator Chuck Schumer, who was on Meet the Press this morning.
President Trump should understand there are not the votes for the wall in the House or the Senate. He is not going to get the wall in any form. We Democrats, Leader Pelosi and I, offered the president two options as to how to avoid the shutdown. And we should not let a temper tantrum, threats, push us in the direction of doing something that everybody, even our Republican colleagues, know is wrong.
Well, in that publicized meeting with the president and soon to be possibly again Speaker Pelosi and Senator Schumer, the president said, look, you know what? I'll take the blame. He'd take the mantle if there is indeed a shutdown partially. Can the president afford to hang the gold Trump sign on a partial government shutdown?
Well, he just had an election. There's not another election for 2 years, so it's not something that in the short term would necessarily have a huge political effect on the president. And his border wall, on the other hand, is something that he's been promising this entire time, a major campaign promise, one of his top campaign promises. And so it's clearly something that the president wants to see completed, to see finished. But Chuck Schumer in that interview saying that he would give a little bit of wiggle room. It's not clear what exactly he'd be willing to give the president on this other than what he's already stated, which would either be the $1.6 billion that could be used for fencing and border security, but not a concrete wall, or to extend or essentially mirror the funding that's already there from this past fiscal year, and that's $1.3 billion, but again, fencing and not a concrete wall. So the president really does have to make a choice here about how he wants to proceed, because if he pushes it off again until Republicans discuss this again at the end of next year, Republicans again will not be in charge of the House. He will have the Senate, but he won't have the House, and it'll be several more months before this conversation would restart.
So the president has to make a choice soon and very soon.
Absolutely.
So before I let you go, can you get Santa to bring me the bag of money, Francesca?
I think we're all hoping Santa is very generous this year.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you.
Well, President Trump and his lawyers are really firing back at Michael Cohen and Robert Mueller after the president's former so-called fixer was sentenced to prison this past week. Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, slamming Cohen as he says a liar, and says the president did not know about the payments that were made to two women during the 2016 campaign. Ellison Barber is live at the White House with the very latest on these claims. Hi, Ellison.
Hi, Eric. Michael Cohen says that nothing was done within the Trump organization without the knowledge of Donald Trump. He also says that President Trump, not only did he know about these payments, but Michael Cohen claims that the president directed him to make them and that he directed him to become involved in these matters. The president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, he says that that is false, that the president has repeatedly said it is false. And either way, Giuliani argues it is not a crime to make that sort of payment. Here's Mr. Giuliani, followed by Michael Cohen's former lawyer, Lanny Davis.
Paying $130,000 to Stormy whatever and paying $150,000 to the other one is not a crime. The Edwards case determines that. She was paid $1.1 million to be a no-show in his campaign.
As you know, Mayor, the Redwood case is actually quite different. The judge in that case said that if this payment,
George, it's not the judge. It's the FEC. The FEC ruled on the Edwards case before they prosecuted it. The FEC ruled it's no violation of the campaign finance law.
Mr. Giuliani going on the air today ignoring the fact the FEC never ruled that what John Edwards did was appropriate. That's a lie. There was never a ruling. And we'll see what the facts, which is something alien to Mr. Giuliani and Mr. Trump, let's see what the facts show.
A few days ago, Mr. Cohen was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Around that time, President Trump tweeted, quote, "I never directed Michael Cohen to break the law. He was a lawyer and he is supposed to know the law. It's called advice of counsel, and a lawyer has great liability if a mistake is made. That is why they get paid." The president and his lawyers say Cohen is a rat, a liar, pathetic, and that he's simply doing all of this to try and embarrass the president. Michael Cohen says that, well, he admits that he has not always told the truth in the past, but he says in this particular instance he is telling the truth, and he claims that the special counsel has plenty of information to support his version of events. Eric?
All right, Allison, thanks so much. Arthur.
Well, Eric, a bombshell ruling by a federal judge after he decides that Obamacare is unconstitutional, with millions of Americans wondering what that means for their future health care. Lawmakers are speaking out as this issue is sure to be front and center in the new Congress. Plus, the U.S. giving countries in Africa a choice. Choose Washington or side with Beijing and Moscow. Should that be a tough decision? Retired General Jack
happened to Jimmy Hoffa. You know, that is explored in our Fox Nation special, Riddle, the search for James R. Hoffa. We are calling for the FBI files to be fully released finally to find out what investigators knew and when. You know, in 2004, we went to this house in Detroit after confessed mob hitman and Teamsters local president Frank Sheeran told me he shot Hoffa twice in the head in that house back in 1975. There's Fox News producer Ed Barnes and myself. We're taking up the tiles on the hardwood floor, looking for evidence of the murder, and take a look. We found it. A blood pattern on that floor that fits Sheeran's story precisely. We found the largest amount of possible blood evidence in front of the closet door where Sheeran says Hoffa's head hit the floor. 7 drops trailing down the hallway where Sheeran said 2 accomplices dragged Hoffa's lifeless body to the kitchen and out the back door to be cremated. I met Sheeran as part of his proposed biography, which became the best-selling book, I Heard You Paint Houses, by his lawyer, Charlie Brandt. With us now, Ed Barnes, who took up that floor with me, dug in the basement, and has investigated Frank Sheeran going back for decades. Ed, welcome. Great to see you, my friend.
Good to be back.
Should the FBI, should the government release all the files finally, unredacted, complete, and open so the public can see what happened?
Yeah, there's a great deal of files, and there is no sort of one Hoffa file that we have to know. There's in New Jersey, there's a whole rooms full. We saw the room full that the Detroit FBI had before they took it back. There's in New York as well. There's ancillary cases around that if you put it all together, finally give us the story of what's almost the end of the mafia. Because what happens after Hoffa dies or disappears is a massive federal effort. That was the thing that coalesced all the law enforcement agencies to say this is too far. You know, the calculated killing of an American labor leader and major political figure and getting away with it. That's stunning. And that moved the country.
It really was, in a sense, an iconic moment. The decline of the labor union power,
Absolutely.
The industrial might of America in many ways in Detroit, although it's still a thriving community.
Right.
Represented by that murder of Jimmy Hoffa.
More than that, the Central States Pension Fund at that point was the largest amount of money ever accumulated. So it was the hopes and futures, the retirement, and the economic well-being of working class. When Hoffa died, that went into the hands of the mob, and a lot of it disappeared.
Now, when we went into the house in Detroit, for example, we found that blood evidence. The FBI did test 50 samples.
Right.
They came up with 28 samples were positive for blood. 2, they got DNA from 2 samples. One was incomplete. Another one matched an unknown male, so they did not match the blood of Jimmy Hoffa to what we found in the house. To you, does that disprove Frank Sheeran's story?
No, I mean, it was unlikely you were going to get a DNA match after that amount of time, too. And luminol does degrade some of the blood, so you can't. The point of using the luminol was basically saying, you know, there have been so many cases where the FBI has gone out and tried to dig up a body of Hoffa and things like that. But this at least gave us circumstantial evidence. It matched his story completely. We were probably going to get more than that, and it convinced me and you and that the story Sharon was telling at that point had a great deal of credibility.
Luminol finds the evidence of blood, which we did find in the house, and we're calling on the FBI not just to release the files, but to retest the blood, the floorboards that we found. Now, in terms of a theory of why he was murdered, for years it's always been, well, he wanted to regain the Teamsters presidency. Right. Frank Fitzsimmons was in the presidency and had a good deal with the mafia and the mob.
Right.
But you have found years ago. This is it. This is
right.
This news. Sorry to age you, but this is a 40-year-old. 40 years ago, Ed wrote this exclusive for the Patterson morning newspaper, the Morning News. The doctor and the mob. What is this new theory that has nothing to do with him wanting to regain the Teamsters presidency, but it has to do with money?
It absolutely does. One of the things you have to understand that for the mob, having a casino in Vegas was recreate what they had in Havana, which was the golden age of the mob, and Tony Provenzano, and I think a good number of other organized crime figures in New York were going, why aren't we on the Vegas Strip? So Gabe Bergoglio's partner, right, buys. I'll tell you the reason this really works. Mm-hmm. The day when they're killing Hoffa, Bergoglio's partner is actually buying the 9.3 acres next to the dunes on the Strip in Vegas. Hoffa's gone, clear it up. And they were having really hard problems in New York funding a casino. Central States Pension Fund could do that because it was, again, it was the largest single amassing of cash that the world had seen up until that time. So yes, Bergoglio, we know he's there at the scene. There's arguments whether he's killed the guy or Sharon did it.
That's Sal Bergoglio, right. Known as Sally Bugs. And we have some video of Sal Bergoglio when he testified, but there he is, saying no comment, leaving the reporters at the Detroit grand jury in 1975. A few months after Hoffa disappeared, he took the fifth. Right. He and his brother Gabe were Genevieve's crime family associates, so said.
Right.
And then Sally Bugs was shot to death on Mulberry Street in Manhattan 3 years later. Right. Your theory is that his boss, Tony Provenzano, Tony Pro, he and Hoffa had a fist fight in prison. The fist fight and the beef and the meeting was not about regaining the Teamsters presidency, but the fact that Hoffa wouldn't loan money to fund the Provenzano Bergoglio casino?
Yeah, because the Provenzano was going all around New York trying to find, he went to the local 282 pension fund out in Long Island, and they gave him $50 million, 38% of the workers' pension. And the federal government stopped in and blocked that. So they were getting blocked almost everywhere for the things. At that point in New Jersey, too, there were so many corrupt banks that, the first money to buy the lot in Vegas came in a shoebox from Juliana to the Bank of Chatham, which was basically a mob hostage bank, and then laundered and used for the down payment for that land.